One Nation's been the only consistent political party for the last 20 years.
They're not talking about you. All right, well, let me tell you, One Nation is talking about you.
Looks like the media's run away from One Nation. They're too scared to ask us any questions, mainly because we're straight talkers and we've got the answers.
This is like a call to arms. You guys need to start making the real decisions and who you're going to vote for.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Ex-Candidates. My name is Stephen Tripp, and as always, I'm joined by Adam Zara and Rebecca Thompson. How are you guys going tonight?
Well, thank you.
I'm good, mate. How you going?
Yeah, not bad. Thanks, Adam. And tonight we have on John Ruddock, who is the Liberal Democrats' lead upper house candidate for the New South Wales election coming up in March. He's also a contributor to The Spectator magazine on Sky News quite often, and he was also a member of the Liberal Party for 3 decades. You wouldn't believe it by looking at 30 years is a long time. So plenty of experience behind John. How are you tonight?
I'm very well, Stephen. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you, Rebecca and Adam.
You too, John.
How did you survive 30 years in the Liberal Party?
Look, well, what happened was I had hot and cold spurts, so I would be inactive for many years. In 2011, I ran for party president of the whole of the New South Wales Liberal Party, and I hadn't been to a Liberal Party meeting for 10 years prior to that. In that candidate running for president, everybody said to me, all the hotshots or the factional hotshots said, John, you should pull out. You're not going to get any votes. I said, no, I suspect I won't get many votes, but I'm going to hopefully kick off a discussion in this party about bringing about democratic reform to the New South Wales Liberals. And so they were right. I did get 9% of the vote, but only about 5% of the party members got to vote for president, all the hotshots, all the members of parliament, all the factional bosses and everything. The other 95% of Liberal Party members who didn't get a say in who their president was be, they liked what I was saying, which was we need to give the rank and file members a vote in who our candidates should be. So that battle went on for several years, and eventually we won in 2017. They agreed to bring about democratic pre-selections in the Liberal Party. Now, since then, even though they have officially meant to have democratic pre-selections, they keep finding reasons not to have them because the party members keep voting for people that the hotshots don't want. And just this weekend, we had in the very safe seat of Castle Hill, we were told that Noel McCoy, who is a partner at the biggest law firm in the world in their Sydney office, there we go. Yep, thank you, Stephen. Who's a good guy, who used to be the Young Liberal president of New South Wales. He's a smart fellow. Now, he had come out and said a few things about saying that the Morrison and Berejiklian government went too far on the lockdowns and maybe they shouldn't have had compulsory vaccination programs, and good on him for both of those things. And now the Liberal Party HQ has said he's not even allowed to contest the pre-selection because he said that. Now, we've got this thing over in China right now, these heroic, ordinary Chinese citizens standing up against COVID extremism, complete psychomania in China with their silly COVID policy, their zero COVID policy, because people haven't had enough vaccines yet. Okay, and so those people in the West think that they're heroes. Well, we're doing exactly the same thing to Noel McCoy. We're saying he can't run for Parliament.
It's just
crazy. That's right. I mean, it's far out. Well, it's not very undemocratic, isn't it?
Shocking. It's absolutely shocking. We were meant to have changed the Liberal Party. Look, I left them 2 years ago, okay, because of crap like this, unending crap like this, where they just want to look after themselves. But so this is a big problem because, the Liberal Party throughout our history has been on balance a good party. But it has in the last sort of 20 years really gone off the rails. And now it's just run by, these people who do not have anything other in their life other than playing cowboys and Indians in the Liberal Party. And they really don't care much about the country and the future.
So you wrote this book, Make the Liberal Party Great Again. Does that involve a lot of what you're talking about now?
Yes. Okay. So that book did have a sexy title, and it sold quite well, and it was quite. It got good publicity when it came out in 2018. However, I'll be the first to admit the book is a technical manual on how to have a perfectly democratic political party in the 21st century, which neither, no political party in Australia is anything like this. I mean, the US political parties, where they have primaries to elect presidential candidates and primaries to elect senators and House of Representatives, that's really the direction we want to head in this country. It does deliver, on balance, better quality candidates and people who are true believers. So that's what the book is about. It's about bringing about democratic reform to the Liberal Party.
With your experience with the Liberal Party, obviously for 30 years, which is amazing, and then also now that you're a Liberal Democratic, so why do you think the Liberal Party has chosen to go like woke or so left?
It's a good question, Adam. Okay, so what I think has happened is there's two factors. Very sadly, in the Western world, in the last sort of 2 generations, we've become so incredibly successful and wealthy, and we've become sort of morally lazy. And so we sort of don't care about freedom because, our great-grandparents had freedom in this country. Our grandparents did, our parents did. We don't know what it's like to not have freedom. And so people have just, since the fall of communism in the early 1990s, and we felt like, free enterprise and democracy had sort of won. They'd won the global debate that all the countries would want to be like this, and they should be like that. But what's happened is we have become, we've sort of forgotten what made us great, which was sort of individual initiative and freedoms and things, and having a small government. And so what has happened with the Liberal Party, so that's sort of the wider picture. The whole Western world is sort of trending down at the moment, not in terms of wealth, that may well come, but in terms of our commitments to the things that made Western civilization the greatest thing that's ever been known to this planet. Now, then the other thing is what's happened in the Liberal Party is the Liberal Party has won so many elections, lots more than the Labor Party. Now, people don't realise this, but Australia's been around for 121 years as a federated nation. In that time, the non-Labor side of politics has basically been the Prime Minister for about 75% of the time. Labor governments are occasional and short, like the Rudd Gillard government. It was 6 years. That's a short term. Okay, and now the Hawke Keating government was 5 terms. There'd been no previous Labor government that had more than 2 terms. So Hawke and Keating were very much an exception. And they were an exception because they betrayed everything the Labor Party ever stood for, which is they basically rejected socialism and they embraced, deregulation and the free market agenda. And so that's why Hawke and Keating were successful. So the Liberal Party, because they've been so successful, when you've been in government so long, there's so many perks to hand out. There's boards, staffing positions, lobbying contracts, seats in Parliament. The machine's got so many things to hang it to give away, valuable things, prestigious things. And so therefore people join this very successful organisation, not because they care about the next generation and they're interested in politics because they want to know, is the next generation and the generation after that going to be okay? They join the Liberal Party because they think, wow, I can get something out of this. I can get something really good out of this. And so we have people who are opportunists come to dominate the major political parties. And so therefore the last thing those people are very motivated and those people are very activated. And the last thing they want is a true believer hanging around. They want to make the true believer feel very uncomfortable because the true believer stands for something and they know that they're meant to stand for something, but they also know that they don't.
This is something I kind of explored at the federal election. Do you think that there comes a point in time where the political party gets too big and too much of a factional machine that you just have to hit the reset button and basically start again? I mean, that's what Menzies did when he started the Liberal Party, back after the original UAP fell apart. Do you think that we've reached this point with the Liberal Party where there's so much factional infighting that you just basically need to start again or maybe move to a new party, like One Nation or the Liberal Democrats?
Well, I certainly have given up on the Liberal Party. Now, a lot of my friends have not, and I wish them all the best, and they wish me well. Because we both, those good people in the Liberal Party do want to turn the country around. Now, in terms of, I think I'm right and they're wrong. But And I think that's because in the last 3 years, we've had a federal Liberal government, and it was in its third term. And in that period, we brought in a COVID police state with, basically mandatory vaccinations. They lied to us. They said they weren't mandatory. They were mandatory for a hell of a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I think there's a pretty serious debate about how good those vaccines are, or bad. They gave us $1 trillion worth of debt. Now, this is the Liberal Party, which is meant to have in its DNA, pay down the government debt. Don't put the next generation into debt. Okay, where John Howard, who on balance was a pretty good prime minister, not perfect, did make serious mistakes like the Iraq War and other things. But putting that aside, when it came to economics, when he lost to Kevin Rudd, the Commonwealth government had zero debt, which is a
we were in surplus.
Thing. Well, that's right. He had a bit of a surplus. That's right. And that's what the Liberal governments have done at the state and federal level for as long as the Liberal Party has been around, and that is a good thing. Now, after 3 terms of this Morrison Liberal government, we've got $1 trillion worth of debt. Now, half of it was caused by combating a bad flu, which was all pointless, and half of it was just crap that they'd racked up because they couldn't be bothered spending money, cutting spending. Okay, then the third reason why I think the Liberal Party is finished is because, the biggest issue of our time is this global warming hoax, and they've sold out to it. I'm pretty sure 80% of Liberal Party members do not believe in the global warming orthodoxy. Now, there are various degrees of where you can be sceptical of it. Some people will say, well, look, maybe global warming is happening and maybe humans are playing a small role in that, but it might be a good thing. And then there are other people who say, look, it's absolutely not happening. We might actually be getting colder. Okay, so it doesn't really matter where you stand on that spectrum. But the thing is that, the crazier people get about the whole global warming agenda, global warming orthodoxy, the more electricity prices go up and the more there's sort of like human suffering around the place. Now, the Liberal Party, under Scott Morrison and Malcolm Turnbull, basically went along with it all. Okay, so, 3 strikes and you're out. The COVID police state, the debt, and the global warming. So that's why I think, yes, we need to have a fresh start. Now that we've had, I reckon 50% of people in this country who vote Liberal and National do so holding their nose. They say, yeah, look, I know these guys are not very good. But they do so. They don't vote for a minor party because they think, oh, well, it's really a contest between Liberal and Labor. But they are doing it reluctantly. So we do need in this, on the the right side of Australian politics, I think we probably do need some type of a reorganisation so we can become a more credible force.
Funny you say that, because they vote for Liberal and they hold their nose. And I've had this thought for a while now as well. You can only, and excuse the the terminology here, but you can only polish a turd so much. It's kind of like it needs to be flushed. That's it now. Like I think. Like I'm a cut and run kind of guy. So once you cross me so many times, like 3 strikes and you're out, I'm ready to find somebody else who's going to do the job. Obviously, that like I'm like a One Nation guy, and what happens is like I believe that that we have to find parties that are policy wise on the right side of the politics spectrum. So and then when you're Liberal and Labor have gone so far left, then you've only got really Liberal Democrats, maybe UAP, and you've got One Nation that are kind of talking about the right side of politics now.
Those 3 parties, there's a few other good little ones out there. Those 3 parties, when their members meet each other, like we are doing tonight, we all like each other.
Yeah,
and we all have a lot in common. I spoke at an event out at the Canterbury Health and RSL recently with about 500 people. Half the room was UAP or One Nation or something. We all had a terrific night. Now there are some differences, okay, probably around economic policy. So I think from what I understand of One Nation is you're pretty hostile towards foreign investment. Now, the Liberal Democrats would say, look, if somebody's overseas, they've got $1 billion, they want to invest in Australia, we should welcome that $1 billion. Now, we would have some reservations about, dictatorships as governments coming in here and buying assets. But generally speaking, look, we're pro foreign investment. okay, and we think it's a good thing. And One Nation probably doesn't agree with that. But however, foreign investment's not the big issue at the moment, is it? Okay.
No.
We can quibble about a few little things here and there, but the average One Nation person certainly knows what's going on with COVID and lockdowns and mandatory vaccines and debt and the global warming orthodoxy. So on all the big issues, the important issues, the issues which are going to sort of make or break the nation and the next generation, we're all in agreement. So yes, we should be. Look, we've got to get this state election out of the way because the parties are all locked in for that. But I think at some point we do need to have a discussion. Yes.
I've heard you speak about this. So you came out to Warringah and spoke at a meeting that I organised, and I was very grateful for you coming out. But you did talk. I mean, we get this question all the time. Why don't the minor parties amalgamate and join together? And you asked that question and you spoke on that. But one thing that you said that I hadn't heard anyone really say before is that we also need to attract 25% of the Liberal Party and National Party as well. Do you think that's a possibility that you could form a new party with all those forces and all those egos as well?
Okay, so look, if we combined just the Liberal Democrat, the FON, the One Nation, and the UAP vote at the federal election, we would have 6 senators if we combine it into one party. Mm. Now, if we had done that and we had 6 senators today, we could be easily the balance of power on a number of votes. Now, if we'd had that parliamentary power, I believe it would have made other people think, who are sympathetic to us, would have think, okay, great, these guys are now becoming viable. Let's invest our vote with them. And so I do believe it'd be more than 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. I think it could be 1 + 1 + 1 = 6. Mm-hmm. And I think what will happen is that the those good Liberal and National MPs and members, particularly the members, but there's still lots of good MPs. Well, not lots, but enough, a handful. Well, I think that that if we're all under the one big tent, a big democratic tent, then I think that we could be a much bigger force than we currently are. I think what's happening with the parties, even though we all get along, the leadership gets along all very well, the members get along, okay, and the policies are largely the same. So I suppose what's happening is that the each of the three big parties on the minor right are probably all hoping that they're going to make the breakthrough to become the dominant minor party on the right, the equivalent of the Greens. Mm. Okay, and they're all sort of hoping, well, let's hope that's us. Let's hope the One Nation people will be thinking, well, let's hope that's us. Okay, and maybe one of them will break through. Okay, but look, if we're still, in a couple of years, still sort of sitting around in a circle, shooting each other because we're not preferencing each other. If we look at the Senate votes, a lot of people voted for One Nation and Lib Dems and UAP. They gave them their number 1 vote, and then they gave their number 2 vote to the Liberal National Party. Yeah. Okay. Now, the 4 of us would have all seen before the election, there was a hell of a lot of material on social media saying, put the majors last. We probably saw it 1,000 times before the polling day. And I thought that message had got out to our voters. Mm. But unfortunately, it did not get out as much as it should have. So what we based good people voted for the UAP, then they put the Liberal Party number 2. Well, that's okay. We want people to preference the Liberal Party ahead of Labor and the Greens. But it would have been a lot more productive. And look, my party was probably the worst. People who voted for the Liberal Democrats probably went to Liberal National Party more than the other minor parties, okay, just by a little bit. So I'm not, it's just a reality that we can't sort of, people won't follow our how to vote cards, in other words, because the people that vote for the minor right parties are people who are fairly intelligent, know what's going on in politics.
John, I just wanted to ask, how would you approach those rusted on Liberal National voters? I mean, my experience in the last federal election was majority of them would have a conversation with you in the street. They'd say, I don't mind One Nation or, this policy, that policy. They're conservative voters, but they just won't look elsewhere. They'll take that blue how to vote card and walk straight into the polling booth. So what do you think we can do to attack that?
Look, I think that is a good example, Rebecca, because you're right. I mean, so many of these people will tell us personally, particularly at polling stations, you meet Liberal Party polling people. They say, "Oh yeah, I love the Liberal Democrats. Or I love One Nation or UAP." Okay, now they are good people. They've just made the calculation that Australian politics is a 2-horse race between the Liberals and the Nationals, and they're thinking, and they are disappointed with the Liberal Party. They are equally upset as we are about all the COVID BS, the global warming, and the debt. But they have made a calculation that we are not really going to change things. Now, based on the last federal election result, that's an understandable view, because we got Pauline Hanson elected, very good, and we got Senator Babbitt from Victoria, who is terrific, who is fabulous. We're very lucky to have him. And Pauline's always been, good. But that's all we got. Okay, now there's a couple of good Liberal senators there, Senator Antic, Senator Rennick. Matt Canavan's usually pretty good. But if we brought the minor right together, as like Stephen said, Robert Menzies did something similar, 70, 80 years ago. If we brought them together, we'd have senators, we'd have serious senators, and then we could grow from there. And those people you're got in mind, Rebecca, they will start to peel off once we start having parliamentary power.
So if we have a look at the Victorian election result, how did the Liberal Democrats stand? I see that is David Limbrick still in contention for an upper house spot?
Okay, well, the election was 8 days ago, and we had the Liberal Democrats had 2 fabulous members of their upper house, David Limbrick and Tim Quilty. And these guys really were the only opposition to Dan Andrews' extreme lockdown in the dark days of those lockdowns, because the Liberal Party basically signed up with Dan Andrews' stuff. Okay, now it does look as though, that chart you've got up there says the Liberal Democrats are on track to win 1. Well, I very much hope that's right, but I don't think that's correct. I think we'll know in about a week. But I don't think it's. But now the Liberal Democrat vote is actually up quite a bit. I think we've averaged close to 3% across the state, and a year ago it was sort of closer to 1%. So it is up. But they have in Victoria a very, very old-fashioned group voting system for the preferences, which means if you vote above the line, and about 90% of people do vote above the line, then that party has full control of your preferences. So this encourages a lot of little sort of fake parties to come along to harvest those preferences. Okay, so that was, and that all the other states in Australia used to have that system, and the Australian Commonwealth government had that system as well. But they've all abolished it except for in Victoria. Now it's very open to abuse, and I think that they'll reform that system. So look, I don't think it's looking too good there for the Liberal Democrats or the UAP or One Nation in Victoria. Now that is probably our toughest state. It is the most sort of left-leaning state. Wasn't historically, but it is for the last generation, which is sad, but that's the reality. The other interesting thing about the Victorian election was the failure of the Teals. Now, it wasn't long ago we were told the Teal revolution is going to march over everybody. And I live on the North Shore of Sydney, and I was feeling pretty confident that come the state election, the Teals are going to decapitate the Liberals on the North Shore. But look, Teals didn't win 1 seat in Victoria. They came close on about 3 or 4 occasions, but I think the latest is they're not going to win any seats. So now they have very restricted funding limits in Victoria. So you can't have multimillionaires donating sort of unlimited money like you can in federal elections. And so that would have hurt them. But they do have compulsory preferential voting in Victoria, which does help the Teals, because that means you can't just sort of vote Greens and then not continue to vote. Now, in New South Wales, we do actually have voluntary preferential voting. So you can just vote for one party and then not fill out anybody else, and that should hurt the Teals. So that's interesting that I thought that the Teals underperformed. Now, obviously, it's disappointing that, that Dan Andrews got re-elected very comfortably after the world's longest lockdown. And, this is a pretty important state. Victoria is about a quarter of the country, probably a bit more than a quarter of the country, not just in population. So it's a very important state. The Liberal Party down there in Victoria, I think, has won about 1 out of the last 8 state elections. So, I just worry that Victoria isn't sort of basically turning into California, which means, look, it's a democracy, but it's a one-party state. And I hope that is not the case, because we all love Victoria. But it's pretty alarming that so many intelligent people can think, because I thought the vote was a referendum on Dan Andrews. I thought the Liberal Party guy was okay, Matthew Guy. I mean, people criticise him. People always criticise you if you lose. But, I thought, look, he was good enough. And so it was really a yes or no vote on Dan Andrews. Well, look, a clear majority of people said, yes, we like what Dan Andrews did on COVID. Or we thought that was the best policy response that we can have. So and they've got the highest state government debt down there in Victoria, all courtesy to Dan Andrews. Of course, he doesn't care about the debt. The left doesn't care about the debt. They just keep racking it up. So yes, it was a disappointing night, no question about it.
Were you surprised with the outcome, John?
Well, look, Rebecca, I can read the polls. I mean, if you study enough polls, you could see that what was going to happen is that Dan Andrews was going to win. However, I'll be honest, with about 4 days to go, there was 1 or 2 positive polls, and I thought, okay, I'll get my hopes up here. I was thinking that maybe there can be a miracle. So, yes, I had been sober about it until about 4 to 5 days to go, and I thought, no, I let my hopes up, and I thought that Dan Andrews can lose.
I was very disappointed, and I'm going to tell you something. We, Stephen and I, went down to Victoria and helped out Ricky Lee, one of our the candidates for the upper house, and I never ate so much ice cream in my life that night. Once it was we just went there. Remember, we went for a bit of a walk, and I'm kind of like, you know what, man, I just need something. I just need some sugar or something. I was just get disappointed. And I just bought the biggest ice cream and just smashed it, because I'm thinking to myself, if Dan Andrews gets back in, I doubt that I'm ever going to go down to Victoria again. And I travel down there twice, sometimes 3 times a year. So, I've got family down there, and it's on the peninsula is beautiful. So, what can we do?
Well, look, these things in the Western democracies do go through cycles. So they sort of go to the left and they go to the right. They sort of move in cycles. If we went back to the 1980s and the 1990s, the right-wing governments were dominating the West, and things were going very good when we did that. We defeated the Soviet Union, and we made the economy boom, and we ended the wars. Okay, so things were very good. And even the left-wing leaders in the 80s and 90s, people like Bob Hawke and Bill Clinton, basically governed as sort of mainstream type of people, not these crazy psychos that we've got now. So let's hope that we're now just in a cycle. That I think that the cycle, the anti-right cycle, began with the debacle in the Iraq War, which was supported and cheered on by the right wing in the Western countries. And then that turned into hell. And I thought, and then America for the first time elected the left-wing Democrat, Barack Obama, and things have sort of moved to the left since then. And the left has basically dominated things. Now, even when we have somebody who at face value is a right-wing leader in the Western world, they govern like a lefty. Scott Morrison, Boris Johnson, who's a highly intellectual person, and we all thought he was a pretty serious, smart conservative. No, he sold out on everything. He's good on Brexit, but besides that, he was pretty bad on everything. So these people are sort of, the only exception in the world, of course, is Donald J. Trump, who had a go, and I thought he had a terrific presidency. No foreign wars, no wars at all, and made the economy boom, particularly for poor, lower income people. So I thought he was terrific. And then, of course, that they threw everything at him to make sure he didn't get re-elected, including sort of making COVID 20 times worse than it was, and then blaming it on Trump. These things move around, and let's hope that we are just in a cycle, and we're we're at the sort of the peak of the left right now, and then hopefully it will improve. Now the alternative is, and this is the bad version, is that, like I mentioned before, I mean, like that California used to be a fairly right-wing state. Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon were for California, and but now California is just sort of basically the left has got a lock on California. Okay, it doesn't matter. The Republicans won't win anything. They can put Jesus Christ up for governor. He's not going to win. And they've got full institutional control. So they have control of the courts and the police and the universities and the public service and health department. Okay, and the vaccines. Blah 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 blah. So they've got education. Of course, that's huge. They've got full control of everything. And they can just sort of, engineer permanent majorities. You don't even need to sort of, have dodgy vote counting at that point. You can just sort of, get people to vote for that party on a regular basis. And it's not good. California, which is declining in population for its first time in history, crime's through the roof. All the indicators are bad in California. Big companies are wanting to move to Texas. Where they, basically you've had consistently right of centre government, and people are happy there, as they are in Florida and other good states. So it's look. So your question, Rebecca, was, is this just? Are we just in a cycle, or could this sort of be the perm? Well, what we've got to do is we've just got to roll up our sleeves and give our very, very, very best to turn it around. That's all we can do.
That quote triggers me. Roll up your sleeve.
Yes.
And then get back to the end of the line.
Yeah, but one of the things that the right wing had to face and is continually facing is big tech censorship. Now, Elon Musk has just taken over Twitter, and we had a big document drop just recently that included the censorship that's gone on, the collusion between Twitter and the Democrats and Hunter Biden's laptop. Like, how important is this drop to explain the situation? And they've had a lot of right-wing people saying, hey, I'm being censored, and people kind of dismiss it. But now it's all come out in the open. What are your thoughts on this drop of information that we've seen from Twitter?
Well, look, it's terrific to see that it's coming to light. Now, it's obviously 2 years and 2 months too late. Okay, so it's now inconsequential in terms of, the New York Post released it, I think, about the 10th of October, which is about 4 weeks before the 2020 presidential election. Now, in the good old days where the corporate media were fair and balanced, they might have leaned left or they might have leaned right, but they were basically fair and balanced. And this would have been a story in any previous presidential election which would have destroyed Joe Biden. Okay, and people say it's about Hunter Biden. Look, poor old Hunter was the victim here. Hunter is a pathetic person. Hunter is a serious drug addict who's not a very high IQ. His daddy, Joe Biden, who's been a big player in Washington for 50 years, Obama's vice president. He's been using all of his geopolitical contacts with the Chinese and the Ukrainians and all the others, all around the world, and sending. He'd go over there as the vice president, open the doors. Hunter would come along with him, and Hunter would go and do some business deal. Hunter doesn't know anything about business, and it was all Joe Biden engineering it. So it's not so much about Hunter Biden's laptop; it's about Joe Biden, and the laptop makes it very clear that Joe Biden was in on all these what I call geopolitical scams. And the Biden family have all become very wealthy people. They're worth tens of millions of dollars. Now, at least the Clintons, they used to go around scamming countries all around the world, scamming governments and big corporations. But at least the Clintons had the intelligence to dress it up behind a charity. We had the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative. They used to hold all these summits, okay? Crap, okay, all garbage. And then they used to say, we're donating money to, some important cause in Uganda. And I'm sure some money did get down to Uganda and Haiti and other places. Okay, but Julian Assange, when he released the Clinton emails in 2016, it was revealed that about 91% of money donated to the Clinton Foundation got spent on admin. Okay, so it wasn't actually getting down there to help, fix up the sewage plant in, Zambia. It was paying the Clintons. Okay, but at least the Clintons used to sort of say, "Well, we're running a charity, and the stupid John Howard and the Liberal governments and Labor governments have handed over hundreds of millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation over the years. Oh, I'm sure it's going to a good cause. Okay, and they're all just been misled, of course. But the Bidens are so dumb, they don't even dress that up as a charity. They just go around and say, "Oh, give us money, we'll open doors for you in Washington." Okay, so now what's happening with Twitter and Elon is that look, we all had very strong suspicions that what has now been disclosed is exactly what we thought would be the case. That Twitter were falsely suppressing a very important story about this Biden laptop situation, and they basically the story comes out in the New York Post, the oldest newspaper in America, started by Alexander Hamilton, very important newspaper, comes out with this huge story. And then the New York Post's Twitter account gets frozen by Twitter, by the former management. And they basically, if you retweeted anything about it, your account would be closed. Okay, so it was a pretty... Now, if it's... And what's been coming out, Elon's now the owner. He's got access to all the emails legally. He's just releasing publicly what internal discussions there were. And there was clearly... Some employees were not happy about it, but they were basically saying, "Look, we've got to do this to stop Donald Trump getting elected." That's what they basically said. Now, would it have changed the election if they hadn't have done this? Well, I'm absolutely 100% certain it would have changed the election, and Trump would have won massively if the media had done their job and not only not suppress it, but talk about it for a week. Okay, because that was worthy of being talked about for a week. So if that had happened, yes, we'd be sitting here and we'd be halfway through Donald Trump's second term.
Well, I know that the media the social media and media played a big role in Donald Trump's perception, because when my children aren't political at all, and when I was talking about, and I'd say, because I like Donald Trump, and I thought, he was doing a pretty good job and whatnot. And then they'd turn around and go, "Oh, Trump." And they do I got teenage girls. So, you get, "Oh, Trump, and he's an idiot, and this, that, the other, and he's an orange, and he's this, that, the other." And I'm like, "But how do you know this?" "Oh, well, I saw it on TikTok." "Oh, well, I saw it on social." And I'm like, "But, I said, do you know that the Hispanic demographic really, really like him? He's got a high approval rating from Hispanics." I said the African Americans kind of really, really like him. He's closed borders and he's protecting the borders so that the lower demographic aren't getting their jobs stolen from aliens that are coming in from the southern borders and stuff like that. So it's giving the people who've come across properly, the right way, migrated properly, and they start off in the lower paying kind of roles and work their way up because, that's just kind of like the way it seems to be. And they go, "Oh, well, we didn't know any of that," and you get all this added. So I'm 100%. I'm 100% in agreement with you about the social media and all the suppression they're doing, because I get smashed as well. I had a meeting last night with some of my followers and supporters, and one will get a post when I repost the next candidate's video, and one won't.
Right.
So it's a very big. I think across all, and I only use Facebook because I'm not very good at other ones, and I reckon it's something needs to happen there as well. I think that they need to be more open and even across the spectrum.
Yes. Well, look. Hopefully, Elon's ownership. He's a very active CEO. He's taking a very keen interest in it. Now, he has borrowed a lot of money to buy Twitter. He's put down a fair bit of cash as well. And advertisers, I'm hearing mixed reports about whether he's going to be able to make this thing profitable. Twitter had always struggled for profitability, but it's obviously very, very powerful. I know Facebook's got a larger reach, but Twitter is where sort of the journalists are, etc. And so it is very, all the heads of states. So if they want to make a statement about something, they'll basically go to Twitter to do it.
Yeah.
So it is an important outlet now. Now Mr. Musk is in there, and let's just hope that he can make it very, very successful. Because if he can't make a profit out of it, he may have to sell it. Then it'll go back to the bad old management. And then it's nice to have one major big tech company that is, openly dedicated to free speech.
Well, it just goes to show if that Hunter Biden story was suppressed, what other stories are they suppressing as well? Like, what messages are not getting out there that should be getting out there? I mean, you're very active on Twitter. Have you noticed any of your tweets getting suppressed, or maybe your Facebook, content getting suppressed at all?
Well, look, it's hard to know. Look, I don't believe it would be happening under the new management. Now, look, I was always fairly outspoken about my concerns about the COVID vaccine because I thought it was rushed. But I was always careful on Twitter. I pushed the boundary. I never got I know a lot of people that had their accounts nuked because they went too far on the vaccine, the COVID vaccine. I sort of tried to be careful and stay within their guidelines. Now, I have noticed since Elon took over that there seems to be a lot more activity on Twitter. So I think a lot of conservatives who probably left when Donald Trump was kicked off, I think a lot of them are coming back. But the tricky bit about Twitter is how do you actually, if you own the bloody thing, how do you make money out of it? Okay, that is the tricky bit. I mean, I'm on it quite a bit, and I'm trying to think, okay, well, I don't give them money, and I don't really sort of pay much attention to their ads. But look, if anyone can turn it around, hopefully it's Mr. Musk, because he's been a bit of a genius in everything else he's done.
I think paid advertising is a good way. Not that I have any sort of ideas about it, not really good business wise like that, but I think if he's getting a good kind of spread of bit of left wing, bit of right wing, and most conservatives and stuff are going back to that, then I think with political parties coming onto it, and because I'm pretty sure that political parties would start using that as their main platform. If you started, then you could start filtering advertisement and paying for advertisement and stuff like that, and probably just run a similar platform to what Facebook does.
Well, look, all these things are a bit beyond me, but I understand that Elon's got a lot in the product development pipeline. So he's talking about turning it into sort of the sort of the one app, that will pretty much do everything. So, look, when I don't know much about Facebook, when I go into Facebook, it looks awfully complicated to me.
It's getting worse and worse.
Right.
See, Twitter kills me. I couldn't figure it out.
Really? Okay. Well, that's encouraging. I'm probably having the same reaction with Facebook. Probably just takes a bit of effort.
I just want to ask a quick question because you brought up Donald Trump before. What is your opinion of Ron DeSantis?
Well, I love Ron DeSantis, and I very much hope he can be the president of the United States one day. And he is terrific. Now he's better than Trump on COVID stuff, and he's better than Trump on COVID vaccines.
Yes.
Now he's only 45. No one ever heard of Ron DeSantis 4 years ago before Donald Trump endorsed him for governor of Florida. And when DeSantis won 4 years ago, he won by a tiny little margin. They didn't know who'd won for about 3 days. And now, 3 weeks ago, he's got 60% of the vote, which is unbelievably high. And not only was that the vote for him to be the governor in the Florida legislature, in the Florida Senate and Florida House of Representatives, the Republicans, Ron DeSantis' mates, have got about a 70% majority. Wow. Okay, so he has, in terms of political success, Ron DeSantis has a ton of it right now, no doubt about it. Now, Trump has been foolish in attacking Ron DeSantis recently, calling him Ron Sanctimonious, which was funny, as usual from Trump, but I didn't think it was very helpful.
No.
But look, in terms of the betting markets say that Ron DeSantis is the favourite to be the Republican nominee, and he's the favourite to be the next president of the United States.
Wow.
But Trump is second. Okay, Trump is pretty competitive. Now, I think we can all agree after the events of the last 24 hours, 36 hours, with Elon Musk releasing the Twitter files, Trump was robbed. So there is an element to that. There's also an element that Don made Ron. So that is an element. I suspect that Ron will run, and I suspect that Ron will have unlimited money in his campaign, because you're going to have left-wing Democrats will give him money because they're so crazy about the hatred of Trump.
Yep.
The never-Trump Republicans, the Bushes, the Cheneys, the Romneys, all the grubs, all the rotten people, they will swing in behind DeSantis, even though DeSantis has basically got the same policies. But that's not the issue, because it's a personal gripe they've got with Trump. The reason they don't like Trump is because Trump is the only president in the history of America who was a plain citizen who just walked off the street and into the White House. That's why they hate him. The political class doesn't want people to think that we should be like what it was in ancient Athens, where the democracy just elected the finest citizen. So they just detest the guy, that a guy can just win it like that, who hasn't had to play the political game their whole life. So I'm very sympathetic to Trump, and I think he was a magnificent president. The biggest thing for me is, obviously I don't have a vote because I'm a proud Australian, but I follow American politics. As anybody who's interested in the future of the world should follow American politics. I'm going to basically wait. Look, my heart is with Trump. My head is probably with Ron. But I think, look, we're 6 to 8 months away from the presidential debates, the Republican TV debates. And, there will be more people than Ron and Don running. You're going to have the other people that will run. I expect 2 or 3 other people will run who will just be anti-Trump fanatics. So they can have 5 people up on stage all trying to attack Trump. And I guess we just see how those debates go. But the biggest factor in my mind is very simple. Who can win? We do not want these Democrats, and there have been good Democrat presidents in the past, but right now the left is at peak craziness.
Yes.
And so we do not want them running the world for one day longer than absolutely necessary. So if I came to the view that if it's Biden versus Trump and Biden was going to beat Trump, well, then of course we would have to swing in behind Ron. Now, and the other problem is with Trump, and I love Trump. I've loved Trump since the 1980s. I loved his TV show, The Apprentice. I never watched these bloody reality shows, but I watched the first 2 series of The Apprentice. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was gripping. Okay,
You're fired.
I just like his style. Okay, and I know a lot of people, good people, very good friends of mine, intelligent people, good conservatives, get really turned off by Trump's personality. Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to change their view, but I mean, my view is I like him, and I like his sort of can-do attitude. I like his smart-assness, I suppose. But if he does run, which he's announced he's going to, so he's going to run.
Yeah.
And he loses, now then we have difficulties, because Mr. Trump may well then say, I was robbed on running as an independent. If he does that, he's just guaranteed the Democrat victory, which is the last thing we want. He could also say, okay, I didn't win, but I'm telling my supporters not to vote for Ron DeSantis in the general election. He might do that, and that would also be really bad. So look, I'll tell you, it's going to be fabulous theatre, political theatre for the next sort of almost 2 years. I thought that the Democratic primary is going to be very interesting, because I thought, well, I still think, less so now, but I had been of the view that it's a certainty that somebody will challenge Joe Biden in the primaries, because he's a mess. He's a geriatric. He's not there. And it's not good for America to have such a moron there. But look, to be fair, Biden's party did very well in the midterms, relatively, and so that does reflect well on Biden. And he's now the talk is that he is going to run again. Okay, so, but if it's but we can't run Trump if it's going to mean that Biden wins. Okay, now if it's 50-50, if we think it's 50-50 who's got the best chance between Ron and Don, well, I would definitely lean. I'd say let's go Trump.
My impression of Donald Trump is that he's a fairly solid patriot, and I think I'd want to hope that he would. You've probably studied him a little bit more than me. I haven't. Well, in saying that, I've never really studied him or followed him too much, only from what I've seen. But I think, but from what I've seen, he's reasonably like a real patriot. I think I would hope that if he lost that pre-selection, the way it works, that he would back DeSantis, because that would, that's going to make America better.
Well, that's very rational of you, Adam. Okay, and that is, you're talking pure common sense. Okay, now, well, I just know that Trump is Trump because he is sort of unpredictable and things. I hope you're right about him wanting to do the right thing at that point. Okay, but he doesn't sort of take a loss. He doesn't have a record of taking a loss well. Okay, and I say that as someone who's a huge supporter. Okay, and that's a problem. Okay, so that's, let's hope.
I'm really worried. I'm really worried myself because.
Yeah, not only that, like if Trump is the nominee and he starts attacking DeSantis, well, I think DeSantis would be a fabulous vice president. Like they should be. Obviously there's going to be a contest between them, but they should be on the same team. They should be on the same ticket, really.
It's just like Australian politics, ego over the greater good.
Yeah. Well, look. It would be a powerful team, Trump DeSantis or DeSantis Trump. Okay, but it's absolutely not going to happen because they. Let's say Trump wins the nomination, and so DeSantis has come second, well, then Trump will probably want DeSantis to be his vice president. But if I was DeSantis, he will say, no, I'll just sit this one out. I'll wait for the next opportunity to come along, because people who are the vice presidential candidate on a losing presidential ticket basically have no future in politics. So you with me? So if Trump runs, DeSantis is his VP, but the ticket loses, sometimes the person who lost can make a comeback, the person who was the presidential candidate, but the person that was second on the losing ticket is basically finished. So that's why I think that we would be better off saving Ron to have a fresh go in the future.
Let him just keep being the great governor of Florida that he is. Let him just keep doing what he's doing, building his name.
Well, and making Florida not just great again, absolutely fabulous.
Before I want to go there.
It's crossed my mind once or twice too, Adam. When Ron was elected the governor, Florida was the fourth biggest state in America. It's now the third biggest state in America. It overtook New York State. Florida is now bigger, more important than New York State. And a lot of that it will be because people who were skeptical about COVID mania and COVID vaccines being rushed, and those people that lived all across America, a lot of them were internal sort of migrants, refugees, if you will, to Florida. And all those people that pick their bags up and leave Minnesota or Wyoming or Maine or Massachusetts or whatever it is because they don't want to live under a COVID police state, they, of course, will be the best type of internal migrants you can get. They're going to be good people, smart people, common sense people, hardworking people, and they don't want to live on welfare. They're going to stand on their own 2 feet. They might try and start a business. If they've got a job, they'll work their heart out. That's generally speaking the type of people who are against the COVID orthodoxy. And Florida is being flooded with these good people. So this is why Florida is California used to be the Golden State. It's sort of where dreams came true. Well, it's probably swinging back to Florida now.
Speaking elections, with ours coming up in March for New South Wales, what's your prediction, John? Will we remain blue, or will we turn to a red state?
I'm about 80% sure that the Labor Party wins. And that is, a couple of big factors. So the first one is this is a 12-year Liberal government asking for 16 years. That's a long government. It's the longest serving non-Labor government in the history of New South Wales, this Liberal government. I think normally Labor actually runs the state here, if you look through history, but so it's a long government. It's not a pretty sort of dull government, but the opposition leader Chris Minns, comes across pretty well on TV, if you ask me. Comes across as he doesn't come across as a left wing Labor radical. He comes across as a centrist. He comes across as reasonable. He just seems like a bit of a cool dude. Okay, and those sort of traits will go a long way in politics. But the Victorian election showed us that the voters still want to sort of reward incumbents, and it also showed us that the Teals didn't go that good. And look, Dominic Perrottet, who is a really smart guy and a nice guy and a good guy, who I know from people who know him very, very well. They tell me that he didn't believe in any of this COVID stuff. I believe it. I believe that's true. I know Tom Perrottet very well 10 years ago. Haven't spoken to him since it's been prevalent many times, but look, I know him pretty well, and I'd be certain he doesn't believe in it all. But he went along with it all, right? He went along with it all, even though he doesn't believe in it. But look, the press don't seem to hate Dominic Perrottet. They often hate right-wing leaders. They hated John Howard. They hated Tony Abbott. They just didn't give them a break. They seem to be reasonably nice to Dominic Perrottet. But, so I'm 80%, Rebecca, that we'll have a change of government in this state. But it doesn't really matter. Liberal and Labor are pretty much governing the same thing. Let's just hope the minor party vote on the right can go well.
We spoke to Joel Jamal last week, and he pointed out from his analysis that hopefully One Nation will get 2 members in the upper house, fingers crossed. But there's also a possibility that the Liberal Democrats also could get in the upper house, which would bode very well for you.
Yes.
If that was to happen, that would be fantastic, I think. But what are some of the policies, maybe just as we're finishing now, what are some maybe 3 policies that really you want to push forward as the Liberal Democrat candidate?
Yeah. Okay, well, look, there's this very evil little tax called payroll tax, which is a state government tax. So once your salary, if you start a little business and you really, really work hard and you're smart, you've got a good product and you have good staff and your business grows, and then you're paying about $1.2 million a year in salaries, you then have to start paying about 5.5% of all your salaries to the state government. Now, what this does is it's an incentive not to grow beyond a certain limit. Okay, and we're punishing success. Now, what the state needs more than anything else is thriving, growing businesses. Okay, if anything, we should reward customers for being successful. So that would be one thing. The second thing is that I think that we really need to come out and be on the front foot and say coal is a good thing, nuclear energy is a good thing. Okay, and here we are. I'm wearing a jumper in the 4th day of summer. I'm often wearing UGG boots. Where's the global warming? I can remember as a kid being really hot in October. I still had the heaters on in October this year, and it's been the case for some time now. Okay, so yeah, I think we need leadership to get out there and say that it is all BS. Now, then, look, another thing which would be sort of a Liberal Democrat special is that we basically believe that all schools in New South Wales should be private schools. So, and now what that would mean is we would give all parents in New South Wales of school-aged children a voucher at the beginning of the year. So here you go, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. You've got little Mary Sue there. Here's a voucher. It's worth $20,000. You can cash it in at any school you want. You give it to the school, they educate your kid for a year, then the government gives the school the $20,000 for the voucher. Now, if we do that, it means that nobody loves their kids more than parents. The parents love the kids a lot more than the Department of Education. And so the parents are going to know, I've got a kid that really, really, really loves art. So I'm going to send them to a little school that sort of teaches them everything, but it's got a bit of a focus on art. Might be some kids, by the age of 7, you can tell that they're going to be pretty entrepreneurial. You can say, this person's, hard working, they like to make money. Good. Well, we need more of them. So we can send them to a school that might have a focus on economics and business. Now, there'll be lots of people who just want to send their kids to just an ordinary standard high school that we have at the moment with lots of kids and lots of diversity and whatever they want, okay? And you might want to send your kid to a religious school. But my point is, you can, if the parents are in control of what the kids are going to be taught, or saying, well, I want my kids to be taught something that's proud about Australian history. Okay, well, there's a lot to be proud of in Australian history. Now, there will be some under this system, there will be some parents out there that say, I want my kids to go to a school where they can be taught about transgenderism, feminism, Aboriginal massacres on the outback, and the whole left-wing agenda. And if parents want to send their kids, they want to use that $20,000 voucher to go to a school that's going to do that. There won't be many schools that want to do that. There will be some, and we say freedom. You use that $20,000 voucher where you want. Now, some of these schools will be very small. Some of them will be very big. And there'll be mistakes made. Parents will send their kids to the wrong school for a year or two. And, it won't be straightforward, but we will have diversity in education. And there'll be competition in the education system. And we won't have the education department bossing us all around saying, well, this is the curriculum. Every kid in New South Wales is going to get taught this, and this. And they're all going to come out thinking the same thing. So that is a very libertarian principle, the education voucher, which is one of the things we'll be standing for.
That's a very interesting policy. I mean, it sounds good. No, I'm not 100% sure if I agree with it, but it's a nice policy. It's a good one. And I think, being libertarian and, if that's what that's the compass that you guys go down, a little bit more than, say, One Nation people might, but I like it. I think that's a good idea, giving the kids an opportunity. And you're right. Children get to, the parents get to choose, well, see what their kids like. See, my daughter wants to become a veterinarian. Right. And she's only 11. So I'm like, well, okay. So then I'm like, you got to focus on your sciences and your, and mathematics and things like that at this point, because and push those. But I can only work inside the curriculum that I've got. Whereas what you're saying is, you could find a school that might gear more towards like animal or medical, and then that would then make her flourish in that direction.
Absolutely. Parents will work it out. The parents will be in control in consultation with their children. They will work it out, and there's so many different types of things a school can specialise in. Now, if there's a school, let's say it's a school that's specialising in sport, and the kids are not getting taught how to read and write properly because they're playing too much sport, the parents are going to work that out very, very quickly, and they're going to take their kids out of that school, and that school's going to not get their voucher in the future. So the schools are going to have an incentive saying, look, we've got to offer first-class competition because there's 3 other schools in this suburb that are competing for that money. At the moment, the kids just get sent to the school that the government has put together, and the government is shoving all this crap down their throat, all this ideological crap. This is why the kids leave school these days and they think the world's coming to an end in 3 years, and they're sort of having nightmares about it. It's all crap.
Okay. They can't read about it because they don't know how to read.
Yeah, well, that's right. So yes, that would be a thing that would be desperately needed. That would be something about education liberation.
Well, I'm all on board with the payroll tax policy, but we're coming to the end now. How can people follow you? I know you're very active on Twitter. That's where I follow you the most. But where can people find John Ruddock?
Look, Twitter's the best. I'm usually pretty active on Twitter, so it's simply at John Ruddock 2. So that's RUDDICK 2, and that's usually sort of whatever's happening at the moment, and then we'll be sort of releasing our policy position shortly, I hope.
And are you still writing for The Spectator as well?
Yes, The Spectator is always very good, so if I haven't been able to send anything off to them lately, but they usually publish what I give them, and they seem to quite like it, so I think I've got about sort of 30, 40 pieces there, so that will, on my Twitter profile, it's got a link to the various Spectator pieces.
Stephen's been writing for The Spectator as well.
Oh, really? Okay, good, so I'll have to have a look.
Just a couple, that's all.
Starts off with 2, mate, and then it's going to go and go and go. Don't worry, you're going to get addicted to it. You're going to be there typing all the time. I just know what he's like.
Anyway, thank you very much, John, for coming on. All the best for the state election. Obviously, we're rooting for One Nation, but we're very friendly to you as well. So thank you very much for coming on.
Good on you. Thanks very much, Steve. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks very much, Adam.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you.
Take care. Bye.